The commodities boom, seeing government collecting 120 billion rand more in tax revenue than previously projected. By September, the South African Revenue Service had managed to collect over 720 billion rand in revenue, with a surplus of over 79 billion against the February budget estimate. So Treasury has hiked its revenue estimates by 120 billion rand in anticipation of better than expected revenue collection. Let's hear from SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter on how these targets will be achieved. He joins us this morning via our video link. Commissioner, thanks very much indeed for your time on the AM report. So the Finance Minister saying some really good things insofar as revenue collection is concerned. SARS on course to add that 120 billion rand to the fiscus. Won't solve perhaps all of our problems, but certainly helpful.
Certainly. I think every additional cent, Chantal, that we are able to collect brings about some relief. And in particular, we are always mindful of the many millions of South Africans who are vulnerable, who without a social grant or some form of support would be completely destitute.
Yeah.
So yes, we are really focused, as was reported yesterday. Some of the additional revenue that we have collected year to date was boosted by the commodity prices and production volumes in the mining sector. But we also have, as previously reported, continued the rebuilding process of SARS, hiring additional capability, refocusing the way we work. And so a significant portion of the revenue surplus is also as a function of the activities that SARS is engaging in.
Just for your own information, you're in conversation with Michelle Craig, Mr. Kieswetter, and I want to talk to you more about the issues that you just mentioned around vulnerable South Africans. How important is this projection, do you reckon, in addressing some of the concerns insofar as social spending is concerned in our country?
Well, first of all, the 120 is a projection.
Yeah.
It still has to be collected, a significant portion thereof. There are some downside risks which we can touch on, but we are positive that we will give it our best effort to make sure that the 120 is collected. And yes, as you mentioned, almost the entire extension, for example, of the social relief of distress grant was made possible to extend that, as the Minister again reminded us yesterday, until the end of this financial year. Because of the surplus that we had collected, there was no need to borrow any additional money to fund that program. So to your question, how important is it? It is absolutely important that we have a well-functioning revenue authority, a revenue authority that is able to collect the taxes that are due, because it is exactly that kind of support. If you think of those frontline workers, if you think of the additional money that is allocated for vaccine programs, then we certainly within SARS are very clear that our work is transformative and enables government to deliver the services to South Africans. We're also mindful that we have fallen behind in terms of infrastructure. The Minister referred yesterday something that is very close to my and our job at SARS, which is the capacity at our ports of entry. The fact that we are totally underdeveloped and cannot process travelers and cargo at a speed that is required. We have these long delays at the peak times that removes, that adds hours and hours and therefore unnecessary costs to the economy. So every component of our economy and the investment by government, whether it is the social services or the infrastructure that enables economic activities, will not be able to progress. And of course, the last issue is a lot of the programs are plans, and if plans are not well executed, if there's wastages and corruption, then that is disheartening. So you can see there are many factors that impact, on the one hand, the ability to collect and extract the tax revenues, but on the other hand, how it is spent, how diligently those who have the custodialship of that money works. Everything then comes together for government to address the expectations and the legitimate needs of the South African public.
Yeah, and a lot of this depends on this rebuilding of SARS that has been underway for some time, doesn't it? It means hiring the right people, equipping your people with the right kind of technologies. Tell us more about this smart, more modern SARS that really is targeted at, among other things, helping to detect and address issues like non-compliance.
Absolutely. So let me just speak about three specific things that we are doing. The first is SARS has, in the period prior to my arrival, lost over 2,000 staff. Many of them were deeply technical skills in areas such as transfer pricing, specialized auditing, and customs officials and forensic investigation. And we have been on a complete freeze, hiring freeze, for several years. Now, thankfully, we have been able to start rebuilding that in areas where we have had deficiencies. But in addition to that, we have to future-proof ourselves. And therefore, areas such as data science and data analytics and technology are skills that we bring in. And then, of course, also in area of the behavioral and social sciences, we also have to, because ultimately we have to understand the mind of a taxpayer. Mm-hmm. So that's in the one area, and we are making slow progress as far as that's concerned. Secondly, today we cannot process through the millions, hundreds of millions of data bytes that we have to process. And so data collecting, gathering, and analyzing that data is exceptionally central to the work we do. Let me give you an example of that. Just in the year to date, because of our ability to employ machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence by interrogating data, we were able to detect and prevent the outflow of over 30 billion rand of people, sadly, who attack the refund system to extract refunds that they are not legitimately entitled to. We were also able to detect and profile taxpayers and raise additional taxes of over 50 billion rand. So just those two components together places over 80 billion rand in the fiscus, which otherwise would not be collected. So the ability to manage data and to interrogate that data and to impose artificial intelligence is important. And then thirdly, the way we interface with our taxpayers is key. And because of the work of technology and making the man-machine interface easier, we were, for example, able to allow for more than 3 million, more than 3.5 million taxpayers a simple experience where they can complete or fulfill their obligation in literally under 5 minutes. And 90% of those taxpayers would have experienced an assessment outcome in under 5 seconds, and almost 90% of them would have received their refunds in under 72 hours. So those are the capabilities that we are building, which enables us, firstly, to clarify the obligation to taxpayers, because that's very important as part of our strategic intent. Secondly, to make it easy for taxpayers to comply. And thirdly, to give SARS the capability to detect and to respond to non-compliance.
It's interesting that you bring up the issue of compliance, because that's another issue that SARS has been trying to address. In fact, I've got some numbers here in front of me. It says efforts by SARS to collect outstanding debt and to drive taxpayer compliance across all taxpayer types, yielding 170-odd billion rand for the fiscus. But this issue of compliance is such an interesting one because it is so closely linked to the issue of tax morality and how taxpayers see corruption playing a part in their own compliance.
You're so correct, Michelle. The issue for us of concern is that when the public loses confidence in government and in the system of government, and unfortunately SARS cannot disassociate itself from government, then they feel morally justified to fiddle with their taxes. Secondly, when they see high levels of corruption and wastage, not only do they become disheartened, but the criminal element amongst them proliferate. Let me give you an example. During lockdown, because of the decision to ban alcohol and to ban cigarette and tobacco products, and I have no issue with that decision, but the unintended consequence of that is we have seen a proliferation of tobacco products that are illegal, that are made in South Africa, that are substandard, if one can talk about a quality standard for cigarettes. They pose health problems and they distort the local economy. Now that those restrictions are lifted, consumers have become aware to cheaper and alternative products. So they don't go back to buying legitimate products. They stay in that criminal supply, and that distorts our economy significantly. So those are some of the concerns, unfortunately, and we continually and unapologetically share with our colleagues in government that we have to be better stewards of the resources of state, because not only does that deliver effective goods and services, it also brings about a more compliant citizenry, and that is an endowment effect on the ability of SARS to collect revenue. So our work is intertwined with the quality of spend by government.
SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter, thanks very much indeed for your time this